All right, Robert's like trying to nip at the bit and try to get out there. He's trying to pull the reins away, but we had to let the intro run, so we got to let that go and wait for other people. And Glenn jumps in. So happy Friday. We are there. Ah, spent pretty much my entire week working up in Cave Creek in Carefree. So and today's particularly nice. Let's see. Dennis says howdy from North Central Washington. There you go. And there's David. David and Lacey sent me a gift bag um, from Louisiana. Well, they dropped one off, and I got it. Thank you, David. Last night my pork chops were breaded, and I can't remember what the other stuff was. There was some other stuff we put on it. That stuff was a little red thing. Anyways, thank you for everything. You'll see some more of it in Chasing Legends. One of the things you can't really see it is up on the shelf. But it's a crawdad crayfish. I keep calling it a crawdad, and then everybody keeps telling me no, it's a crayfish. But crawdad and crayfish are the same thing. When I was a kid, we used to go down and catch crawdads down the street. By there was some old farms, and there was a irrigation canal, and always had crawdads in it. We used to fish for crawdads. But anyways, got all your stuff, and we did enjoy our dinner last night. So it was Cajun pork chops. Well, actually, then there was also fried chicken with it, the breading and stuff too. So it smells really good here. Crawfish, crawdads, crayfish. See, it's just everybody's got to have something different. I just call them crawdads, and I don't know there's no difference. It all means the same thing. Tiny lobsters. Tiny lobsters are really big, well, much larger versions of shrimp. But yeah, we used to do that stuff. Anyhow, 72 degrees, a little partly cloudy, nice and breezy. It's super nice, feels like 65. But even the cooler news we heard from Tyler earlier, it is snowing in Flagstaff. It is cut in half on the temperature. It is 36 degrees in Flagstaff, and they're getting snow. So we're supposed to get a touch of rain, but that's pretty wild. It's basically 2 hours away, and they're just getting dumped on, and it's 36 degrees. So it's one of the cool things about Arizona, man. An hour and a half drive, you can be up there and drop the temperature, cut it in half. Uh, either other. Best lesson. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I always just knew them as crawdads. So, anyways, as a kid, that was our thing. We didn't even use fishing poles. We just get line with hooks and stuff and pull them out because they were tiny and stuff. But that was a big deal. Anyway, well, Al, thank you, David and Lacey. So more will be coming of all that. But yeah, so I got my crawdad, crawfish, crayfish up on up on the bookshelf already. So yeah, he just can't be seen up there. You can guess you might be able to see him a little. It's really hard, but yeah, got him. So I don't know what's for dinner. I think tonight is we're gonna eat nachos and stuff. So I don't know if any of that'll go with that. So, but tell Lacey thank you. And it was kind of funny because to show you the difference in personalities, I got the stuff, and I said, hey, just come here, I'll unlock the truck, set it in the truck because we had a meeting. So, and I fully intended, and I was thoughtful. I figured I'll thank them later. Well, Lacey starts telling me what's in the bag, and trying to explain things, and I'm like, I haven't even looked at it yet. I don't even know what you're talking about. So that was funny. Well, then I come out from the meeting, and I was talking to Greg Davis. And so Greg Davis and I are shooting the breeze for a while. I get to the truck. Trevor has everything from the bag laid out and is going through everything and all. So yeah, I'm the person that would have probably not even looked in the bag till I got home because I don't have that. I don't know. I was never that person that had to tear open Christmas presents and stuff like that. Charles Kenworthy, Chuck, what is your take on him? I remember treasure books. I got a number of books by him. Um, when I was a kid, he found gold. That was one of his claims that he found gold. His thing was a heart thing up over on Charlie Boyd Mountain, which is now known as Black Mountain. I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. Anyways, I got several books. He has the treasure side, Spanish treasure sides. But he had 4 or 5 of those books. A couple directly pertaining to the superstitions. Treasure Hunter, partner at times treasure hunting with John Wayne. I know the family, there's still some involvement. Um, I don't know. I just, I never didn't have a problem with his books. I'm not a big treasure sign person. I have a number of books on treasure sign. The problem is, the more common the books have become, the more people have replicated those symbols in the mountains. So you come up on something and go, well, this is definitely this. Well, it's because someone else bought the book too. So, but I know he was serious about that. A lot of stuff, shipwrecks and things like that. In the superstitions, there is a book by Amy Mosier. I don't know where it's at. Anyways, Amy Mosier put a book out, and in it was a statement that Charles Kenworthy was the only person who ever found a significant amount of gold in the Superstition Mountains. And this quote was by Greg Davis, so I immediately called Greg up when I read it and said, Greg, you're quoted in this book for this. He remembered Amy, said she was a very nice person. She came over to do a bunch of research and stuff when she was putting her book together. He said, I never said those words. I said, okay, well, just checking. Because it sounds like you're saying Kenworthy took out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of gold out of the superstitions. And Greg was like, absolutely, I have no idea of that. So sometimes the myth, I mean, I know he was somewhat successful, similar to Frank Fish, who gets kind of downplayed. There's a number of people who can be quite successful. I think the days of those kind of guys who kind of were in there much earlier has kind of faded away. It's much more difficult for people to find things because so many people have been through. But yeah, he was rather successful. I know one of his sons at least. I don't know how many there are still if they're involved in it, but some of the Kenworthy children were involved in treasure hunting as well after he passed away. I have a couple things about from him, letters, not directly to me, but to other people. One of them is a very interesting letter I have from him to Helen Corbin. And sometime I'll have to do a Chasing Legends on it because it disputes something that someone specifically addresses and on social media about certain things. And this was a letter that Kenworthy wrote just because it was like, oh, I saw in your book you mentioned this. I thought I'd share some stories with you. And he just kind of shares it, and it's inadvertent to much later, 20 years later, when this other person would talk about these things. But that's something to say for one of those things. But I've shown a couple people the letter. I just happened to run into it, and I was like, man, that's really cool. So I don't know why people have to say they knew people or they met people or make stories up about people that they probably never met. I don't know, but that was one of those cases where I realized, oh, someone's been talking out of their backside for many, many years. And, I get telling tall tales or stuff, but when you're trying to specifically make yourself into that person, that's wrong. And they did it recently again. They kind of threw something out there that I'm questioning very, very much. But they just like to be like, I don't know, that's just who they are. Till viewing you're on this day, I didn't realize how many people got killed. Oh no, we did a thing on that. If you look, I don't know if it was when we were doing Facebook. It wasn't quite the major YouTube. It was when we were pairing with, because we used to do everything really heavily Facebook, and the lives were all Facebook, and I would do the lives, and it should be in there somewhere. I don't know. I'll have to look for it. But there was a thing where I did deaths in the Superstitions by the decade. So there was the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think it was, we found there was more people getting killed in the 80s and 90s than any other time. So I was kind of shocked. But we did that live. When we used to do the lives, I used to bring in kind of sometimes a bit of a program to go through, and I sat there and went through the list of how many people and specific things. But yeah, we definitely did that. It's kind of, I think the thing I was shocked at is in the 90s, after the closure from the wilderness area to mining, and most people were being moved out of there and stuff, how much it actually got worse before it got better. Frank Fish, we'll look him up, but who he was a treasure hunter. You should know Frank Fish. Frank Fish was a treasure hunter, Amador, California. And there's a book called Who Killed Frank Fish that talks about him a bit. He published a couple things, did a lot of magazine articles. Very successful. If you find old treasure magazines, you'll find articles where he went into Mexico or the Southwest, and he found a lot of stuff. He was really good. The Frank Fish map, which is the one Peralta map that is on leather, that he got, and then he passed it on to Erie Schaefer, and then she passed it on to Al Reeser, and now it's in other hands. But that was from him. He wasn't he was just interested for a short time in the Superstitions, but he was quite successful. Had a museum in Amador, and then mysteriously one night got a phone call, and then sort of wrote this very weird, odd suicide note, and then supposedly shot himself. But there's a lot of questions about what happened, and then his museum was constantly ransacked. Erie Schaefer knew where this map was, which was among the number of things he was worried about someone getting, and he had it tucked in behind the canvas of a painting. She went in and got it after the place was being broken into. But a lot of his, it was funny. There was gold, and there was all kinds of stuff that could be traceable that was inventoried. People broke in and didn't steal as much of it, but all his files and all his research stuff was missing. So someone was looking for very specific things. So, but yeah, Frank Fish, and I, very, very interesting character. So, but always good to look some of this stuff. I think some of the stuff from some of the books is in articles on the internet. So if you get on the interweb, you'll be able to find some information about him. But there was Dead Men Tell No Tales, or Dead Men Do Tell Tales. That's one of the books, and then the other one's Who Killed Frank Fish. Dead Men Do Tell Tales is by Erie Schaefer. Who Killed Frank Fish is by some other guy. And then Frank Fish, there's a couple. His books were generally kind of like Penfield or one of those guys where it's just a list of different treasures you can go look for in different places. And but he did a lot of magazine articles. Um, some experts say there were two mines the Dutchman worked. Well, since he didn't speak of two mines, why would there would be experts? That's one of those weird things when people, like I said, you want to talk about the weirdness of like, Julia Thomas and Reinhard Petrasch knew Jacob Waltz. One, he died in her house. Two, he was buried next to Reinhardt's brother George. Reinhardt was likely the one that got him out to the wagon when the flood came. Reinhardt spoke of it, and Julia spoke of their association friendship with Waltz. I think that's why there's less of them. I think as time got by, they spoke to a few more people, but I think one of the things that happens is when people try to make something into back then it wasn't a conspiracy theory, but when people, the embellishment or people are trying to argue with you, I think they get quieter, which is what happened with both of them a little. I think they just kind of went, why even bother messing with these people? They're not going to listen, which certainly happened in the realm of Reinhardt. And I just think, and then you had Dick Holmes running around telling his version of his tale, and he was catching, since he's the one talking, everybody starts listening, and it's very funny because there's newspaper articles where they're not even mentioning Julia or anything about the Dutchman with Julia, and Dick Holmes is, considered the expert, and yet I fully, as one, believe he knew maybe who Waltz was, but I don't think he was familiar in any way or ever probably spoke to Waltz. I will stick by Reinhard Petrash's words that if Dick Holmes ever spoke to Jacob Waltz, it was in the afterlife. So that's pretty, that's a pretty hard statement there. So when it comes to experts and some of the stuff I've heard, there's, nine mines I've heard that Waltz's didn't even have a pit mine, that it's an actual placer down in the wash. That's where all his gold came from. Yeah, there's somewhere there was posted a thing of like 150 different clues, and you can take about 50% of those clues, like 75 of them, immediately out because there's no basis for them. You have to base them on some documentation or something someone would say. And unfortunately, you can only tell so much story or go so far with all of it because there was really only two people that would have really known. And they had limited information, but what they had, they shared. And they shared with more than Jim Bart, just other people by that point had become more and more interested in searching for the mine. So they weren't, I'm trying to, Howlands, they shared very little of it. I've always been interested in where the Howlands material is. Did it go to someone in the family or someone privately, or what happened to it? Because they actually were familiar with Julia and went over and visited her and talked with her. And you would think there's some really good stories there that we do know, but it would be really cool to kind of know the extent of some of the background. Are you familiar with the Ortiz letter? Yes. And Matt, do you think it's authentic? I don't know. It it feels like to me is when you read the bark notes, and Julian Reinhardt said that Waltz, on the documents he had his, his paperwork for citizenship and stuff, but he had a map and a letter. And the letter was kind of his deed to the mine for temporary ownership or something like that he had. To me, I'm not sure. I asked Tom Collenborn. Tom said at first he thought it was very real. He wasn't sure. I can't remember what Bob Corbin, because I asked Bob Corbin, because I figured those two probably knew the history of it without giving me up too much, and even now me not saying too much about who has his own. But I kind of started getting the feeling that everyone thought it was authentic, and then it started to fall out of favor. Which is also, there was letters from Waltz to his sister or niece, and those circulated around. And I found a lot of correspondence Tom had with people, and Tom addressed those. He thought they were real. He visited, and then once he got into them, kind of what I ran into with the Reinhardt Petrash letters at one time was you suddenly realize the person's basing and building that material off of material that's actually known. And then when you know the material that's known is in error, well, why would this be an error too? So one of the things about being really good about not chasing ghosts in this aspect is to say, okay, there's facts, there's probabilities, possibilities, and this could be plausible. You kind of rank things. And then you also know there's things that you don't really have anything, there's no hook to hang them on at all. You're just like, where'd they come up with that? And if you watch things like that, then you read documents and you base them on that. So that's one of those problems. It was similar to Travis Tomlinson had obviously picked up Superstition Gold, and what was the other, Ghost Gold? One of the two. He picked up copies of that, and he had the rendering of what a Julia Thomas map would look like. Well, then he went home to Texas, and in the process of making stone maps, he also took and made a Julia Thomas map on hide. Well, the problem is that map he made was pretty much a duplicate of the one in the book that they made up to show people what her map would look like. And to this day, people say the Julia Thomas map. That map is a map made up basically by the Dons, and it was meant just to kind of show you some of what Julia's map might have looked like. It has nothing to do with Julia Thomas. The Dons were not around before she died. So Orrin Arnold and the others involved in the book, that was what it was. Well, I don't think Tomlinson really was processing and understanding what it meant, or maybe he did and didn't care. And he took that and made his authentic map. And then they found that, Frank and them found that, and I got pictures of it, but they found that in Texas still. So that goes a long way of explaining, what people will do. I mean, and it also kind of explains those Peralta Stone maps. If you're making Julia Thomas maps, why would why would you be finding real maps then too? Or you would be admitting it. So yeah, I was really trying to do this, and I, believe it or not, I found this. Um, there's a lot of honesty missing in there. Was two guys that were supposedly with him when Waltz was never charged with anybody's death at anything that I know. There's no sign. There's a lot of, he paid his taxes. He voted. He did his number of things. There's lots of records on him. A lot of stuff that just. But, and there was no probate because he'd already signed his things over, his property, and any major stock or anything like that. Buildings were lost over to the Stars, but so just a few personal items ended up with Julia, and everything else ended up with the Stars. But no, there was the one guy killed on his property, and the one other guy communicated that what had happened, and that's in the article. So I don't know why Waltz has even thought of that. And the nephew, whether you want to call him Oliver or Jerry, I'm pretty sure that story was a made-up story. Um, but his, did he ever kill somebody? Well, it's possible. He was a pioneer and stuff. In those times, things were very different. But was he this murderous guy out there in the mountains, and people were following him, and he was watching his trail and all that? I think that was part of the whole romanticized version of the story. I think Waltz wasn't running back for them. We know one thing, according to Waltz, he hadn't been to the mine in 10 years. So basically, it was around 1880 would have been his last trip. And then we find at that period of time also when he ended up becoming ill and deeding his stuff to the Stars. So it tells you a lot right there. Now, Dick Holmes has Waltz, and other people's stories that he got ill because he'd just been to the mine, which he hadn't. And they have this whole other notion, which is because they don't know him. They don't really know the history and stuff. They weren't friends with him. So they just created something from this guy. But he was known well enough, and there's enough documentation to know where he lived. Because remember, there's the stories he was kicked out of taxes. He lived at Julia's for the last 3 to 5 years of his life. All these different versions and stuff. We know he lived in that house, and that's the flood, and all that happened. So, let me get up here. Okay, the Ortiz letter. Wayne, you should add a title to that sign that says Chasing Legends while becoming one. Nah, I'm not becoming a legend. Legends never die. Is that the name of the book? I don't know. I liked that book about the rodeo riding Indian. But that was a way back book. I think I read that in school, in elementary school. I got a copy of it somewhere around here. But no, not legendary. I have that shirt though. It says the man, the myth, the legend. So wear it occasionally. Was Waltz okay? That was that. Enjoying listening about this history. Good. Always can find something, or at least found the mine. Well, Ed found the mine. There's a lot of mines to find. Ron Feldman bought some of that saddle pack that is same all. You're talking about John Cochera's ore. He bought that from John. John was a friend of his. Um, I like Ron. Ron's my friend. I like Ron. I don't even know how to get into that. If Ron listened to this, he'd start laughing right now. I know a bit about the John Cochera stuff. I know where the pack saddle was found. If you're believing the pit mine story, and that John Cochera found the stuff up there by Peters Mesa, Malapai, in that area. It doesn't make any freaking sense how one would tie to the other. I mean, I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff. But John Cochera sold what he had left, I believe, of his oar when he was sick and all. And his daughter used to come on too in the lives and stuff and watch the videos and stuff. I haven't heard from her for a while, but they didn't really know much about his Superstition Mountain stuff. I think he came out with his brother originally and stuff. But yeah, John Cochero, everybody liked him. He was a nice guy. He spent a lot of time traveling out and trying to find it. He stayed with the Feldmans. I think he stayed at Ron's place when he came out to do it. And then when he was hard up for things and things were getting bad, I think Ron just kind of figured, well, you don't got anything, but how about if you want to sell me the ore, at least it'll be in good hands. I don't think Ron's really broke it up or sold it off or anything like that. I think Ron just, I'll keep it and it'll get passed on and all that. So yeah, but that's a Cochera ore. I got a lot of pictures of that. So and the problem is with when you're checking and comparing ore samples, a lot of ores can look very similar. You can check the matrices, but I learned when doing the gun and shooting it and checking it is that if we moved the gun, it gave us a much different reading. And a couple times it was really odd. Unexplained, unexplored. We used it. There was another time, but I talked to Dave Cook. No longer with us. Dave was a great guy, but I talked to him a little about it. And I said, "Is it possible if you just kept moving around, would you be able to literally line up or get right?" And to get it right or close enough. And he said, "Oh yeah." And he said, "There's certain aspects about it and all, but," he said, "Yeah, it's because that was the problem I had. Is I always believed in that would be the way to match or the most specific, and then I realized once I started using it and looking at the numbers, and when you have it and it's in the case, you can just start playing around with it on all kinds of stuff and everything." And I started using it on we used it on the Matchbox, and of course that wasn't probably the best sample to do it on, but we were using it on the Matchbox and another piece of jewelry and some other stuff that was brought to us, because while we had it, that was one of the things I was big on, is trying to use science to match things up. And that was the first thing I found out, is as we moved it, it would kind of sometimes throw off way different readings. So I was able to sometimes get things to seem they were more dissimilar, and other times I was able to make it seem like things matched. So not an exact science, unfortunately, and I learned that the hard way. Tumlinson definitely made the stones. Okay, we got that. Hey, Dallas. Maybe see you tomorrow. I don't know if you guys will be out tomorrow. Hey, howdy, Wayne. Oh, everybody. Wayne, I hope to see you for the 1st of May. I get back to the Superstitions. Oh, yeah, that's right. I heard you were coming back. You were on your way back. So, sorry to hear about your mom. But, yeah, good that you're on your way back, and you know hopefully better times, hopefully everything will turn around for you and all there. There's Joshua. I believe it came from the mines around White Mountain, etc. Iron Mountain, White Mountain. Oh, okay. Well, all right, there you go. And again, we can always hammer that stuff out. That was one of the things, because there was a separation of the shows. I don't think, trying to think if Jesse and Josh might have still been working in Greenland, and I told them to get a hold of Ron on that, because we had so many samples and so many different things to test. I said, let's get everything all at once and then just chart it out. That would be cool. And that was important to me, because that gives you numbers and all. And somewhere I got a piece of paper that has a whole bunch of the stuff written down. But I suddenly lost, I remember we had done a number of things one place. I'm not going to give people up. Hey there, you can bring your boots in.
You want me to bring them in?
Yeah, you should bring in your boots so people can see your boots. But yeah, we did several locations, and each location we were testing, I wanted to keep writing down the numbers and comparing them and stuff. And like I said, then I realized, oh man, this sucks. But that happens in life. Greetings, Wayne, and all gold seekers. Gil Gold Prospect in San Antonio, Texas, where every day is a golden day. There we go. Trevor today went out and spent some money. He brought one. This is his new boots. He wanted black boots. He needed some dress boots. So this is his new dress boots. So he will be taking a little chain and chaining them to his ankle. How much do those boots cost?
A lot.
How much?
It was like $600.
Yeah.
Cayman.
Cowboys could not afford boots no more.
Yeah.
That's kind of a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and congratulations to Dallas for becoming a Dawn of Arizona, which is very cool. And there's, oh, you're still there. Okay. Well, I thought you kind of moved off. It's got crowded reading that. No, reading as well. People are saying nice boots, slick. Yeah, he has his other boots, and he gets them all dirty and dusty. They're brown, right?
The other ones, yeah.
Yeah, and he always supposed to wear stuff more in black to match for formal stuff and all that. And so he went out and said he was going to get a pay. He wanted to know if I wanted to go, and I'm like, no, just go, spend your own money.
Well, and so many of them are not comfortable. Like you put them on, and it's like,
yeah.
These it was between these and like another pair that were like $50 less, and I figured
Joshua for over $600 for a pair of cowboy boots. He better not be wearing them in the water to begin with. Dirt on them. No, he's gonna be walking. He's gonna be walking on a carpet.
The other ones have in front of them. The other ones have lots of dirt on them. Yeah. Stuff, but these ones.
Yeah. The only other thing is, ones like that you gotta watch getting your toes scuffed and all. But yeah, now he's got his boot trees to put them in him and all his whole thing. Yeah. So anyways, that was his deal today. But yeah, he picked up some new boots because he needed dress boots because he was wearing brown boots with everything. And I said, when it's Cowboy, does it really matter if it matches? They will just get better. Definitely worth it. Well, my pair of boots, my black... Trevor, you guys still have my black boots in there. Did Tyler take them to ASU or NAU? Yeah, my black boots from the 70s. We still have the boys wore them when they were growing up. They used to wear them. And I think their feet outgrew them, but they still have my black boots. So that I used for dress boots. So they still have mine. So yes, boots will last. Man, those ones, man, they've gotten new heels put on them because they've been around so long. But yeah, those have to go back to 79 or 80 when I got those when I was a full grown boy. Anyways, yeah, and that was a problem. See, I wore my dad's boots and he wore a size 10. And I wore a size 10 when I was like 13. And then my feet continued to grow and I wear a 13 now. So I outgrew my daddy's boots. But the boys, I handed my boots down to them as I got older. My feet, I don't know what happened. My feet got wider. They were tighter fitting, so I got a new pair finally. And then Trevor wore my boots for a while, and then Tyler wore them. Here they are.
They've been through a lot, haven't they?
These have been around. Yeah, they've literally just fallen apart. But yeah, I don't even know what brand they are. Oh, shit. They've been around forever.
Oil and chemical.
Yeah, they haven't been oiled.
I don't know.
Falling apart. They look like something should be nailed to a rafter somewhere. The rats have been at them.
Oh, that's just numbers.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was made in the USA.
Well, yeah.
That's about it.
Well, those were from an era where they probably, it was probably sacrilegious to make cowboy boots anywhere but the USA. No, those were a good pair of boots. They used to be stiff. Well, yeah, that's long gone. Anyways, so we'll continue to go down. There's a time and a place for cowboy. No, it's the thing I got into is I hate dress shoes, and I like ankle support, so I always wore boots if I had to wear anything other than tennis shoes or go barefoot. So that was one thing. And I do have ties, but I really hate ties, so I have bolo ties because that is considered an official. And then I also have my Western cut suede jacket to wear. So I do have that, but it's all Western. But it was all by design that it was more comfortable for me. So back black eel. Yeah, them old cowboys used to get them eels and make boots. Let's see. They will get better worth it if they're not made in Texas. They're not real cowboy boots. Get your money back. I don't know, man. There's plenty of cowboys in Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. A lot of cowboys elsewhere. Texas always has a thing. If it's not out of Texas, it's not blah blah blah. Okay, Sky Cloud, you gotta have that Texas thing. You guys did give us ZZ Top, so cheers. Um, yeah, Wayne wears comfy sneakers. I always wore sneakers in the mountains. It's like wearing moccasins. Think about it. Actually, they're probably a little more durable than moccasins and all. But no, I graduated from the Converse to the Nikes, but I always, God, I never understood people wearing big old bricks on their feet. These big old thick things where you can't feel your foot, can't feel the ground. You doesn't allow your foot to bend. I never understood any of that. So, and I actually still have a pair of moccasins. So there you go. And they are knee high. And yes, but yeah, I never understood the whole thing of like I could buy a pair of tennis shoes for 30, $40 at one point, but everybody else, yeah, construction boot, and I have construction boots too. So yes, I don't have many pairs of shoes. I have the high tops I'm wearing, my cowboy boots. I have my construction boots that I have not worn. Well, actually, the last time I wore them was when we were filming because they accidentally took the stupid hiking boots I absolutely hated back to Los Angeles. And when we finished filming here in Arizona, and then when they came back to film, I remember, I can't remember Dave's last name, but the guy's name was Dave. He was one of the executive producers. Where the hell are your boots? Because I was wearing these tan work boots, and I didn't have cowboy boots at the time, and I didn't certainly have hiking boots. And I said, I don't know, you guys took them. And he said, what do you mean? Somebody took them, and I said, you guys took them along with this and this and this. You guys took all of that gear, so all I got is I got my shirts because I bought them, my pants because I bought them, my hat. Those are mine. But you guys took the boots, put them in a box. They went back to Los California. So then he got on the phone and got really mad. So it's like 9:10 in the morning, and he goes, "Okay, we're gonna shoot around this because the hiking boots were very dark, and you do catch a glimpse of the work boots a couple times, but they're very light tan. And so he basically had them put them on a plane and ship them here, and they were here like God. They got them out of there, got them to the airport, got them over to Phoenix, and got them out to us. It was probably it had to be about 8, 9 in the morning. This happened 7 or 8 in the morning, and it was just after lunch around noon, and someone came walking over with them boots, and I was like, man, I was hoping they'd just go away. But continuity. All right, I wear Chelsea boots from Bloodstone, Tasmania. I have a steel. Yeah, Wayne wears comfy. Yeah, I love my comfy sneakers. I would too. Spend too many. Hey, when you ought to try some Chelsea boots. They're like original Explorer boot from the train. Frank swears by his old Vietnam combat boots. That's what he wears. He likes those. So, I mean, I always saw it as whatever is really comfortable and your feet don't get tired and gives you the support and the traction and you trust them, that's what you use. So that's where I've always went. And when I was a kid, if you want to be quiet, you want to sneak around in the desert and you're hunting and doing stuff, you want something lightweight. Definitely you can dry out when it gets wet because that's a big deal too. I remember when we did the show and we got soaked out at up the Salt River. My boots were wet for the next day or two. There was no way to dry them. So my boots were just nasty and they started stinking and all that. My high tops would have been dry the next day. So there. So Ruth Burzell. Oh, okay. Drink the Ruth Burzell. Bob Ward. Gus Barkley and a few others. And Tree. Wear my old Red Wing steel toe boots. And footwear to me is, and that was the thing was that whatever the reason was, History Channel and A&E said, and the production company said, nobody will believe that you wear tennis shoes in the mountains. And I said, in the Killer Mountains, they talk that they keep selling out of tennis shoes because the indigenous natives, Indians, whether it be Pima or Tohono O'odham or Apache, bought all the sneakers all the time because they would buy cheap sneakers because that was the closest thing, a lot easier to get than moccasins. And I was like, that's just kind of a standard thing out here. And you go out. Now they make hiking boots that are more like tennis shoes. But yeah. Yeah, I know there's some of the jungle boots are really good. Frank loves his. So, but I think it's because you wear them. He probably wore them when he was a police officer. And it just becomes a thing. It's what you're used to. So, whatever you're used to, whatever works for you is what you should use. I mean, don't I God, it took a couple weeks to get my balance and footing and feel right in those stupid boots, and it caused me a lot of problems because they just didn't feel correct. I don't remember if the other guys got shoes because when I showed up in my high tops and they were absolutely not, and there was a big problem. And they took pictures of my feet and they sent the stuff off. And then I got back and told no, no. And then they brought all these boxes. They went to the stores and they bought all kinds of different kinds of shoes. They must have spent thousands of dollars on boots because I'm very picky. I want something that feels comfortable and feels lightweight. And they had me trying, and I finally settled on a pair because I realized I was not going to find any I liked because they just don't exist. But so I finally just said, I'll just go with these. I'll just because I did not want to try on another pair of boots, and that's how I ended up with that. Moccasins, the only problem is there's not much cushioning in it, so you don't get the cushion from your backs, for your back and your spine and your joints coming down and crawling around the mountains. Good for climbing though and stuff, and kind of like because you can get your toes and work things in there and all. Hum. Larry, okay, thanks. And so here we are, and well, we've kind of moved right along. Um, but yeah, it's been kind of a busy week. Like I said, I was up in Carefree Cave Creek, and even today I was back up in Carefree Cave Creek. I expected not to have anything today, and then I ended up driving out there again. Did not see any snakes for the whole week. So I was out there, and that's snake country up in there, up in the rocks, and I was out by the ranches and out in the mountains. So I did not see any snakes. I saw a lot of rabbits. I didn't even see a coyote the whole time, but I did not see any snakes, just lizards and rabbits. So it's, we'll see what happens warm up. That's usually one of the areas I do see a lot of rattlesnakes over time, up in that country there. Um, we'll see what happens. See if I can get some good footage of a snake to slip up on everybody. When you slipped on the rocks the end, were you wearing your seat? No, I was wearing the stupid boots. That's why I slipped. Well, I slipped because my knee. I was going up over this boulder. I was going up these boulders, and Russell, the director, producer, yelled, "No, we're going to go this way." Because I figured we'll go up this way, cut across, and go up the side. I did not want to walk in the guano. I wanted to walk on the rock that had surfaced up around away from the guano. I thought I angled towards it. I was thinking in terms of what you would do safely. and it had been raining, everything's soaking wet. And I turned and was like, really, and all that. But when I turned, I'm on a slant, and I turned and pivoted on my left leg where that was the knee that was, and I thought the knee would hold. I obviously thought that, and it didn't. It just buckled, and when it buckled, I went pitching backwards, and so it was only about a 4 foot fall. Well, add in your height, but yeah. So now the thing that saved my ass was I had my pack on, so when I went down, I busted a couple water bottles in there, but when I went down, there was a boulder. Because when I fell, my feet caught because there was a gap between the two, and when I fell, I hit, and my pack hit my body, and my head just hit the boulder light, just enough to give me a little bit of an annoying headache, just a touch, but it didn't get a bump or anything else. But my hand somehow got underneath me. I don't know if I was trying to put my hand back when I was falling, but I got my hand underneath me and I fell on my hand. So that's what happened there. That was just purely on the pivot, but I'm sure part of it was moist and slippery on that slope. And then I kind of like bounced right up with my head because I was pissed because it was the boots. It was, I don't want to go that way, a lot going on. And then I pulled up my hand and it's all just bloody because when I got out of the boulder, it kind of like just shredded on my hand. So I got blood coming off my hand. And then I kind of felt my head. And then Dave, not the Dave, there was two Daves who were EMTs on the cruise. And this was the other Dave. I can't remember both last name. But anyways, Dave came running up and said, we're going to call the chute. We need to get him out of here. He could have a concussion. And with whatever happened to his knee earlier, we don't know the severity. So now he just fell off that. So we need to do this. And then they just kept going, and Magnuson ran up. He did not help things. It's easy to light my fire. Magnuson ran up, tried to hand me a bottle of aspirin, and then be the EMT, and I told him to F off. I'm just sitting there. So I poured water on my hand, realized nothing's broke. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna swell up a little, but it was still functional. And we're miserable. We're wet, and I got a drink, and then I lit a cigarette, and then I was like, so what do we do? What's the deal here? Do we have to come back out here? Like, if we call this today, do we have to come back out here and film tomorrow? And someone said, yeah, we're going to have to come right back out. This is our third day out there, and it keeps raining, and it's miserable, and everybody's cold because it's freaking 110 every day, and now suddenly the wind's coming down the canyon and it's raining on us, so we're all cold and miserable. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm looking at the ground. I was smoking the cigarette, and they're all arguing. It's like, I can hear them, but I'm like in a little room to myself. And then I just remember standing up, and I turned to Magnuson and DeLille, who were just standing there looking around like, what the hell? And then I just turned and I said, let's go. I'm freaking done with this. And then I started going right up the hill. We started going, and I said, we'll have to zigzag because of my knee, but let's just take our time. We'll get up this stupid hill, and they'll get what they want, and then we can get the hell out of here today. And that's what we started doing. We probably were more than a third up the hill. Glenn Evans, um, good guy, but Glenn grabbed his camera and started following us because he realized what was going on. And now there's like 20 people down at the bottom in the wash, and they look up, and I hear Russell say something about, hey, you come back down. We haven't just down. I'm done. I just, there was epithets, a lot of bad words said, and I basically informed them that I'm going up here, so you can do whatever you want to do up here, And that's exactly how this is going to work. I call the shots. And that's what I did. Now, they caught up to me when I got up to the top because I couldn't move very fast. But Glenn got a bunch of footage on it and all. But yeah, we got up there, and then I went off and stood on the side. Just sat down on a rock, and then took another water bottle, rinsed my hands and everything off of the guano that kind of got on it a little, lit a cigarette, and then Russell said, "You can go out there with Magnus and DeLille. What I want you to do," and then I turned and looked at him, and then again, more epithets come out. And I told him, "See this rock I'm sitting on?" I said, "That's fucking as far as I'm going. I'm not going out in that shit." And I got to turned and started was taking pictures of them, and there's a picture of Chris Rabb, Rab himself from Jackass, was one of our cameramen. But Chris has got these really big eyes because I'm just like, I'm done up here. I'm sitting here. You guys go whatever tomfoolery, which is a much cleaner word than I would have said at the time, of what you're doing, and which it all went downhill from there. But I'm going to sit here and do this. So long story, but yes, it was not the shoe, even though the shoe did not, I was not comfortable in those shoes. It was more of just turning with the bad knee. So I watched the Roger Trough Heart Mine video. Have you been to that one? Are you talking about the one that they cleaned out in Rogers Trough after the pit mine where they did all that shoring and all that stuff? Which video is that? I know they filmed that. They actually filmed Ron and Shoes and all them filmed Rogers Trough. That's actually was made to be a documentary film by Chewy, Robert Necht. But yeah, they filmed that, and then the footage. I think Ron owns the footage. It's never been. I mean, it's a full blown film. They did all kinds of stuff, and then something happened, and then they just never finished it. I tried to talk to somebody about finishing it, but I think it's so long now, and I don't think anybody would care anymore. It'd be nice historically to see some of it because of all the people that were involved. I read in one of Helen Corbin's books that Jim Bark thought that Waltz killed his partner. Well, I don't know how much is true because there's a lot of speculation because we ended up with a lot of correspondence between Jim Bark, Sim Zeeley, um, Erwin Ruth. There's a ton of correspondence, and now I think there's even more from some other sources. ASU Hayden Library has a ton of that stuff. I know the Superstition Mountain Historical Society Archives has it as well, copies of it, but it was donated to the Hayden. And if you go in there, you can read these letters, and they speculate on a lot of stuff back and forth. So at one time they would say, "I wonder if Waltz," because at one point everybody made a big deal because out of a stack, a huge amount of letters, at one point Jim Barker, Sim Zeeley, one of them just says something like, "I wonder if we should revisit and kind of look at the Holmes thing a little deeper." And everybody that supported Dick Holmes went jumping up in the air like, "Hurrah, see, we're right." And it's like, okay, he just said, "Hey, while we're looking, I wonder if we need to look at the Holmes thing." They never mentioned it again. So it's like, holy shit, guys, are you that desperate? So, okay. They sound like a well, they were a bunch of bean counters. The one Greg Davis went in. I don't know which one you're talking about because I don't know. I don't think he ever went in the pit mine. He might have went up. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. I'll see him tomorrow. I'll have to ask him about that. Dallas, if you're there, or Larry, remind me if you're there. Ask Greg um, about whether he. I know he didn't go in the pit mine. They looked down in it. That was him and Jack Carlson, and they got pictures and stuff. But I don't think he went down in it. So I don't know if at Rogers Trough he went down that tunnel because that was a muddy mess. Someone speaking of mud and stuff earlier today in comments on something else. That was a bit of a mess and stuff in the Rogers Trough tunnel. So he might have went in there. But I don't believe he went in the pit line. There was only a few people that went down in there, and because everybody kind of got like a little leery of it and stuff. It was shaky, but not the Rogers Trough or mine in Rogers County. I'd have to check with Greg. Like I said, I've been through all his pictures, but yeah, Rogers Trough. I always think of the old Spanish thing they opened up that they got the timbers from that date back, way back. Shoes has those at the museum. I watched it. Oh, okay. I have to go look. Iron Court one mine. I have to go back and look. I didn't think that was in Rogers Trough. Who knows? Between all the stuff, I watch it on your channel, so I'm at the age where I even forget the crap that I've converted, and I had to have watched it, and we had to have put it up. I'll have to look at it. This is obviously the older stuff, and I have it sitting over here in a pile of stuff that I can watch. So I'll have to go back and look at it because I know we had the Bulldog, and there's different ones I know we have. But then occasionally there's stuff that Trevor has, and Trevor will post, go through, and digitize and post that I haven't looked at. So yeah, so that could be a possibility that something got pulled. But I was pretty sure I selected the stuff I did because I wanted to vet it in case, because like sometimes those guys say or do things on the old videos and they weren't meant for um, public consumption because they have a tendency to say odd things. So, all right, we're getting close to the 5 o'clock hour. We got a few more minutes, and I got a whole pile. Um, you know what these are? These are slides. I inherited Fred Guyry's slide collection, which was probably 50, 60,000 slides. I got like what I thought was most of the Superstition Mountain stuff separated, and then I just found another 40 or 50 ones of the Superstitions. The other day, I've got it down to where I only have about 8 to 10,000 to go through. That's one of those things that's been a challenge because how much click. Okay, so I digitized everything that I thought was of the value of the Southwest. Arizona, that type of thing, and definitely the Superstitions, and then there's other stuff and some stuff in Mexico and things, but um, stuff of them with the pool with their dog and stuff. The family didn't want the stuff, so I've been getting rid of stuff, but I'm trying to pare it down to and then digitize it and then hopefully put something up on that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. That's the Superstitions. Yeah, it's hard to see in theirs. But yeah, I'm digitizing those. That's my project. So I've been I digitized. Actually, see the film you're talking about. I should have done because I did all the digitizing of the film. Trevor did, unless it was a mini DVD, because all the normal VHS and the betas and the 8 millimeter was all me. So Robert, that could be really on me. But then that could have been when I was digitizing that stuff. I got really tired. There's still some 8 millimeter stuff I got to digitize from Cuba and Jamaica and stuff. So yeah, I'm like I said, I needed a break for a while. Now I'm getting back into it to get this stuff done because I want to have it all digitized, saved up, and then try to get it out there so people are aware that it is what it is. And these slides, I think I have slides from the 30s, but most of the slides are the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth. Even their young lady friend made it. Greg was a beast. He was that famous author. Well, it would be the famous author, the guys who wrote books. It would be Tom Collenborn, be the most famous. Sold a lot of books. Jack Carlson. You have um, was it Jack San Felice? Because now you're saying even their young lady friend made it. Jack San Felice. Oh, was he like had a I think there's a video we didn't put up of Jack. Is it true the three DeGrazia paintings were recovered? No, and it was 18. Um, 18 paintings. It was 3 bundles of 6 or 6 bundles of 3 or something like that. It's 18 paintings of that. And that was the small cache. There's a cave or mine that he collapsed that he put more stuff in. There's stuff everywhere. But is it one of the ones where Jack takes his shirt off and ties it around his head and he's walking around and he's wearing his wife beater and stuff and he's just oh, not Jack Sand. Okay, Jack Carlson then. Okay. Carlson always stays dressed. Okay, so it would have been Jack Carlson probably if it was a lady, young lady friend. Well, maybe it was Elizabeth Stewart. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go look at it to see who's in it because that's weird that I would not have remembered. And you know what? At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if you say who filmed it because I'm trying to think of who would have filmed it. Because if you saw Jack and you know it's Greg's in it, then who filmed the damn thing? Tom films stuff, but Tom usually his filming is like bouncing all over the place because he's on horseback or in a car. Um, I'll have to look that up. That's Trevor. It's all on the hard drives. So, but yeah, and I don't think I ever made a master list of what we did. So I will have to go and look. Yes, those films and all those videos, and there's more of that stuff. There's like the 8mm stuff. I think there's hours and hours of stuff just in the mountains. It's not great footage, but there's hours and hours of old stuff from the 60s that we never put out because it's just boring. It's just bad footage. Just a guy sitting on a horse just filming and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure it was Jack Carlson because yeah, it might have been in that area. Yeah, because that was the pair that found the pit mine in the mid '90s. They were looking for something and came across the pit mine and the generator and all the stuff there and took pictures of everything. Nobody was out there. And it was 95, 96, 97 during that period. And they took pictures of it. But yeah, I'll have to, yeah, I can figure it out now. But I'll ask Trevor about it because, yeah, I'll have to figure out who filmed stuff. Because Greg just took the filming, and if you see Greg's filming, he doesn't turn it on when he's filming, but he turns it off. But he accidentally turns it on, and then he takes it down, and then you watch the ground and see his shoes as he's walking along. Greg went right in and crawled. Oh, Greg used to always go in. I crawled in a real tight hole with Greg. Yeah, we ended up going into a few. We always sent Randy or someone in first, but yeah, there's see Orcart mine. There's several Orcart mines. There's the one that's almost collapsed by Black Mesa. I know but that one Carlson went in. Greg didn't go into that because Greg said Jack was crazy because Greg said it looked like it was ready to collapse and he wouldn't go in it. So I'll have to go look at that. Anyhow, I'm going to get out of here because it is Friday. It's getting close to dinner time. It's also the grocery pickup night and a number of other things going on. So kind of chill it out and go through. But yeah, I got I think it's a nacho night tonight. Kids will be back soon. It'll be pizza every Friday for the rest of my life. But hey, that's not so bad. It's just where they get the pizza. That depends. But I hope everybody had a great week. Thanks for supporting us in the Chasing Legends and all this stuff because we really do appreciate it. I did get through all the comments this week and this day in the Superstition Mountains. Find the video. I'll ask Trevor about it. I'll look at it. Yeah, then have a great weekend, Wayne. Have a great weekend. Dallas, did you ever answer me? Are you going out there tomorrow? I was just wondering because I'll need a reminder. I'm gonna have to make a note. I'm gonna get a piece of paper and make a note to ask Greg stuff because there's other things I gotta ask him. But have a good Easter. Oh, that's right, it is Easter. Shows where my religious bent is. Have a good weekend. Not have a family Easter. Okay, oh, that's right. Yeah, it is. Someone just mentioned it's Easter, so the families will be doing stuff. Well, anyways, we'll catch you the next time around, and we'll see what's going on. But anyways, everybody have a great rest of the weekend. All right, because we're just getting kicked into here and everything. Weather is going to be beautiful out here in Arizona for this weekend, so get out and do something. What happens in surprise stays in surprise. I don't know. It used to be like this. This place was like the gossip city, man. Anything that happened anywhere in this town. When I moved here, there was only probably 3,000 to 4,000 people lived out here. With city council and stuff, you knew everybody's business. That was what was weird. It was like moving from the city to a little small town that just had small town politics and all kinds of crazy stuff. Now it's different. Now everything's corrupt and terrible. But anyways, so again, see you soon, Bobby. That would be real good, you know. But and congratulations again, Dallas, and everything else going on. But yeah, catch Chasing Legends on Monday. I'm going to get out of here. I've never figured out. See, I got to get Trevor to do me an outro. That's what I need. Is because see, then if I had an outro, then we could just do the outro. We should. Oh, well, you know what? And I got it. It's got to be like Happy Trails, right? It's got to be like a thing of Happy Trails. Happy Trails to you. Yes, puppets singing Happy Trails. Trevor hates that because I have this thing with puppets. I always think we need to introduce puppets into the live segments. And Trevor says, "Why puppets?" And I said, "Because everybody likes puppets." Which I don't care if you would agree with me or not. I just said everybody likes puppets because I like puppets. So you would all have to deal with the puppets or not watch. But anyways, yes. So that would be a way to have Frank. Have a Frank puppet, and I can have Frank come over here and talk. Anyways, everybody have a great rest of the week. It's just getting too silly now. I will catch you all up on Flip Flop next Friday live. All right. Have a good one, everybody.